Okay. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a real honor and a pleasure to be here. My colleague and I come from I for Policy, that's Innovation for Policy Foundation. And we believe in participatory decision making. That's what we do. And our work around entrepreneurship is really focused on startup acts. And we've worked with a lot of African governments to help them, help their communities, help their ecosystems to come up with startup acts that work. So that's what we're going to talk about today. It is a participatory session because that's what we believe in. We believe in participation. So that's why we've set up the group work, the group tables. So yeah, we have a process or a methodology called decision thinking. And within that, we have the Addis approach. So decision thinking is just the name for the process that we use to sort of improve decision making, to do it in a participatory way. And Addis is one tool within that. And we'll talk more about Addis, but it's adaptive, it's iterative, it's designed to be applied in any context with any group of people. So we don't come in and say, we know what your ecosystem needs. We don't even come in and say, we know who you need to talk to in your ecosystem. In each ecosystem, it's different. In each context, it's different. But we have a process to support in each context how to do that. So why follow a participatory approach at all? There are sort of three, there are lots of reasons, but three key reasons. One is that it improves the ultimate policy. So in this context, we're talking about making a startup act, making a new policy. And so by engaging the stakeholders, by getting the right people in the room, you uncover problems you didn't know about, let alone solutions. So the actual outcome is better, but it also strengthens trust. And so by doing a process that really meaningfully engages people, you're consulting them. The outcomes speak to their truths, and you end up with a policy that relates to them. We're going to talk a little bit later about a case study in Nigeria. I was talking to a colleague a few weeks ago, and he said that in Nigeria, they passed their Startup Act in 2022. But even now in 2025, there is a sort of understanding that is the community's policy. They feel ownership of that policy. So if the government tries to change something, there is a kickback from the community that says, no, this is ours. We feel ownership of how it works. We understand how it works, and we don't want you to change it. And similarly then, so it reduces polarization. It helps find a middle ground. It helps find a compromise. Maybe it's not the best thing for the entrepreneurs, but they have been involved and they have understood that it's the best possible thing for the entrepreneurs. And so it helps, unity. There are a few different methods. I would just talk about this very briefly that we follow. One is, workshops, public forums. We have digital tools, that survey tool that we just used as part of one of our platforms. So you can do quick surveys, polls. And what we're going to simulate today is a hackathon. So it's getting all of the stakeholders together in the room and then co-creating a policy.
So we're going to do a deep dive into the Addis approach of a policy making process. And then we're going to look at how it was used in Nigeria and Senegal, like Mike had shared. And so the Addis process is a methodology of creating policy process. And we've worked with many countries, around 12, in moving their startup acts to the next level. But particularly the two that we'll share, we were really, really involved. And so you have Addis. So you can see it's broken down into subsections, yeah? So you have the first phase is the agenda setting phase. We have care, where we emphasize with everyone in the room, the different stakeholders, initiate and define. Then we move into drafting, where now we ideate some solutions, develop a draft, and then do a review. Then you have decision making, where we adopt and then propose. Then we have implementation, where we monitor and deliver the particular policy that you have. Then you have the sense making, where we get to understand and get to know the different issues and be able to have an M&E around it. And you can see just the different, like agenda setting, you can have like a roundtable discussion, bring people to the room, talk about the different challenges and see what to do as you move along. So it's not a circle as it's here, and we're going to see that. So you can, a process can begin at any point, but still goes through the same process. One of the issues that come around is how to define a startup. So you're making a startup act, like the one you're involved in. So what's a startup? The general terminology is a company that is at the first stage of its operation, isn't it? And then it has the ability to grow and scale rapidly, and it utilizes new technology, and they are really, really innovative. That's the general understanding of a startups. And then they engineer to grow really quickly, basically scale and move to the next level really, really fast, which is different from what you may call an SME. Now, one of the first stages of defining a startup is to actually know what is a startup and define what a startup means within the criteria for the countries you come from. So as you can see in the Tunisia one, the general category, the number of years that a startup needs to be in existence for you to define it as a startup, how much of the capital used by the company is owned within the by individuals within that country, and then the potential, because remember, startups scale really quickly. So in the Tunisian startup criteria, they defined it as less than 8 years. So if a company is less than 8 years, that's a startup. No more than 100 employees. So if your company has less than 100, and 2/3 of capital held by natural persons or investors, then that's a startup. Then you have some discretionary, the ones that may vary from country to country. Strong innovative character, defined as providing an interesting and a differentiated solution to a given problem, and the way they can scale. So this is the product fit and the market fit of that particular solution. So once you define what a startup is based on your country, now you can move on and start the process. Now, we have the questions there familiar. So it's the poll you did, and so we've been doing work for all those countries. Right now we are doing Cabo Verde, and we categorize it within these 7 entrepreneur ecosystem challenges. So we have finance, market access, business support, governance, culture, infrastructure, and human capital. We have an index. We'll show you the resources later. We have a report for all these and the different countries we've been to. We have a library on 22 countries in Africa. We've been able to map them, and all those resources are online. We were really involved in the Senegal process, and you can see it took the Addis approach. So it started with a roundtable. That is in May 2018. Okay, fast forward. When was it passed by the National Assembly? 2019. So a year and a half. So within a year and a half, we had a roundtable. Then we had a hackathon training. We'll simulate a hackathon training in a while. We did policy hackathon rather. Then we had a stakeholder review. Then we did an online consultation. It was a Facebook chatbot then, pre-AI. Facebook chatbot, which worked really well back then. Then we did a co-creation committee. Then there was a town hall with the president to present what has taken place. Then taken to cabinet in November 2019, and finally passed by the National Assembly. And you see, it took the approach, but with the long lines, like the length of the line shows how long that process took. So that's the Senegal Startup Act, and these are the benefits. There were 1,000 citizens engaged in the process. over 50 co-creation activities, 20 iterations of the Startup Act, and different, if different platforms were used. You can see all the benefits. It has access, reduced taxes, IP support, grants, growth, R&D, and the like. And taxes simplified from 11 different rates to 2 rates. That's a win for entrepreneurs like for those who are in the room. Reduce registration fees by 60%. And there was a 3-year tax holiday for any startup. And that's a plus for any entrepreneur who goes into that market. The Nigerian one, which we are also really involved from July 2022, COVID time, to very short until October, but it was read within the National Assembly. There was a public hearing, then it was voted by the Senate, voted by the House of Representatives. There were state consultations. Nigeria is divided into different states. Then it was signed into an act in October 19, 2022. Now, again, you can see the different phases of the Addis process it went through. And there's a whole, if you just Google Nigerian Startup Act, there's a whole paper on this particular act. So 7,000 citizens rallied within the process, 300 plus volunteers, 2,500 inputs, then 30 tech leaders involved. Like Mike said, it's one of the most, people really identify with that Startup Act in Nigeria because of the participatory approach it took for it to become live. And of course, you can see the different benefits it had. IP protection, export assistance, and the like. Entitlement-based labelization, there's a startup portal and a startup consultative forum within that process. So that was the Nigerian one. So all of them within the Addis process that I4Policy help different countries to undergo through. So right now we are working with Cabo Verde. We started in Feb. Yeah, and 2 weeks ago, they had their first draft of their Startup Act using the same method.
This is successful when people want it. And so in Nigeria, I mean, that timeline is unprecedented. It was partly because it was COVID, but the government really wanted it. The community wanted to support it, and it got pushed through. In Ghana, they've been working on a Startup Act for about 10 years, I think. In South Africa, it's still coming, and in Zimbabwe, the same. You need a stable government. You need political will. You need a community that can also get behind it. And so, yeah, you need the right set of circumstances, and you need to be very good at getting the right people in the room. Yeah.